Hey, welcome back. This bootcamp series so far has really focused on taking what you've learned, what you've created, what you've done with your business this far, and updating strategies, systems, everything that you need so that you've got a strong, solid platform for growth. As we head into the final three sessions, we're going to start looking ahead, starting with today's module. Is your business built to last? Don't worry, this isn't more work. What we're going to do is take all of the things you've looked at on a one-off basis thus far and create a system so that as you're growing, you're continually updating, you're continually strengthening your business so that it's built into the process so that you are ready to seize opportunities and overcome obstacles, grow strongly, and grow profitably. Growth obviously is the focus. You want to focus on new products, markets, initiatives, but that takes a lot of effort and vigilance. And every time you do something new, there's going to be new things to learn, new problems you have to solve. You've got to improvise. That's great, and you want to have the room to do it. The way you do it is by having structure around the existing parts of your businesses. If you have processes, if you have procedures that support growth and limit risk, that make those existing operations more scalable so that you can grow faster with less incremental effort. If you're limiting the risk of errors and single points of failure elsewhere in your business, that creates room for you to experiment and take the risks that you need to continue to grow. One thing you want to ask yourself is how quickly could you notice and adapt to any major shift in your industry? If you've got structure, it's going to be easier to do this. And that's because having that structure creates a base for growth. You start with innovation. You try something new. It usually doesn't work quite as you've hoped. So you try different versions. You keep what's working, you update what's not. A lot of people stop there. But what we're going to talk about is now building a process around what's working, integrating into what you're already doing, and making it foundational, making it part of your staffing, part of your training, part of your strategy. That's how you build the base so you can go off and innovate some more. You want to get to is a point where growth makes your business more resilient because you're building a stronger base and not less so because you're taking more risk and have more points of failure. A lot of times when we talk about risk, we tend to focus on external risk. What's a competitor doing? What's happening in the industry, the economy? And those are all important, but you can't control those. The risks that you can control are the ones that are inside your business, your people, which starts with you, key staff who might be bottlenecks or single points of failure. Process. Having none, as we've talked about, can be a risk. Having too much process that stymies growth, that frustrates your staff, can also be a risk. You want to build a sustainable competitive advantage. And a lot of times that's not because you have some whizzy technology. It's because you have a better process. You can deliver a more consistent customer experience. You also want to be diversified. People think of product or service diversification, but also in your customers, your types of customers, your channels. All of these things are important. Margin is also a way to mitigate risk. Sure, profits are good, but having that extra margin, as you'll see, gives you operational flexibility that's important. Culture, your people, the training, the way they approach the business is all incredibly important to mitigating risk and building a company that's poised for growth. And all of these things help build the financial cushion that in turn provides funding for that growth and gives you a cushion against the natural risks that are going to happen as you take on new initiatives. So is there one assumption about your business, about your product line, about your customers, about your suppliers that you're really dependent on? That can be an important point of risk. Now, small businesses are really driven by the people who run them, and that starts with you. You are obviously very important to the growth of your business, but you can also be a source of risk. Do you make too many decisions personally. If there's nobody else who can help, if there's nobody else who can make these decisions or take on these challenges, you become not only a single point of failure, but you become a potential risk. What happens if you're not around? Your key staff obviously are also really important to your business, but they can have a concentration of knowledge and skills that, unless you're careful, gets stuck with them, doesn't get diversified. That can be something that will stop you from growing, will stop you performing as strongly as your business could. They may also be gatekeeping. They like being in control of those skills and they don't want other people doing them. And lastly, because they're good at what they do, they may be resistant to change. Now, you obviously want to incorporate their opinions. They know their business well, but you want to watch out that they're not holding you back. So, is there one person in your business, and that could include you, whose departure would seriously damage the company? As we've said, process is not something that you stop growing to do. It's not something that takes you on a sidetrack. It is part of growing. Implementing process makes you more efficient. Instead of guessing every time, instead of trying to remember how to do things, you've got a process in place. You don't have to guess or improvise. Things can be done by multiple staff members. Everything gets more efficient. You can do more with less effort. Everything is also more consistent, not only the product or service, but the customer experience. And that, in turn, is important to your brand. The customer knows what they're getting. Not only the product or service, but everything from the sales process to close to support is going to be handled well. All of these things also help profitability. Inefficiency burns time, time is money, so inefficiency is expensive. Inefficiency also increases the risk of error, increases other potential losses. It really cuts into your profitability, and profitability is what gives you the cushion and the funding to take the risks to grow. So, one thing to think about is, as you've been growing, how often have you supported that with structural changes rather than just working harder? There comes a point when you can't work harder. You've got to put some of this structure in place. There are a lot of questions you can ask yourself to get to this point of efficiency. What would break if one key person were unavailable? Are there critical activities that exist in someone's head? Again, that someone might be you. Are there consistently mistakes in certain procedures, in certain processes? Are there workarounds that you've been doing because you just don't have the time to get to it? These things cost you time and money and are worth looking at. Where you do have processes, have they been documented so that if the person currently doing them leaves, somebody else knows how to do them, or so that someone else can be trained so that as you grow, there are more people who can help? But processes can cut both ways. Just building more process may not help. At some point, your process might be too complicated. It might be frustrating to people. It might be holding you back. Overall, what you want to look at is utilizing the systems for the business that you want to have tomorrow rather than just backfilling what you've got today. Does your business perform well because you have a process or just because your people are continuously working harder? Another key part of having a business that's built to last is your competitive advantage. And here too, structure can help you. People think of competitive advantage as some technology, some intellectual property that they have. But most companies don't rely on that. They rely on their strong brand, which brings people to them, which makes people trust them. Deep customer relationships that give them stickier, more reliable revenues. Part of those customer relationships might be such that it's hard to switch. There's friction to the customer by substituting someone else. And it's not just your customers, your channels, your suppliers. All of these can give you an advantage if you have relationships that you can rely on. And these things can help you build economies of scale. Now, if you're running a young business, you often think, well, that's for the big guys. But even a young business can have economies of scale if you've built these relationships with suppliers, with channels, with customers, and your corporate culture, your team, because that's what makes all these other things work. That's what makes your brand trusted, your customer, channel, supplier relationships strong. So, what are you doing that will make your business harder to compete with as you grow instead of more generic and easier to compete with? A lot of risk comes into play when things are too concentrated, when you're overly dependent on a single or limited key element. That can be sourcing, suppliers, manufacturing. That can be customers, either individual customers or a particular category of customers, a particular geography. You want to try to have as much diversification as possible. Distribution, too. If you're too dependent on one channel, one type of marketing, you could be at risk if something happens there. And as always, people, yourself, your key staff, even your advisors. You want that knowledge, those key skills as distributed as possible. Now, sometimes you are going to have concentrations because you chose it, but you really want to understand which concentrations are strategic choices and which represent risks to your business. All of these things, reducing points of failure, improving processes, are going to improve your profit, are going to give you a stronger margin. That margin makes you more profitable, but it also makes you more flexible. It makes you more resilient. First of all, it gives you pricing flexibility. If there's a downturn or if you see an opportunity, you can discount. You can also discount strategically. If you go back to our earlier session on pricing, we talked about using pricing to get the customer to behave in a way that's valuable to both you and the customer. You can do that better if you have more margin. Margin gives you that financial cushion that not only protects you against inflation, against other setbacks, but also gives you competitive resilience and the ability to keep going. That extra margin can be a source of funding for better marketing, for better outreach, for stronger customer acquisition and retention. It also gives you the ability to say no. If you go back to our recent session on customers, not every customer is profitable. Being able to focus on the ones who are really driving your business is what's going to give you that platform for continued profitable growth. And all of this gives you the room to experiment, the funding for new initiatives, the ability to absorb the inevitable mistakes that come with trying something new, all of the things that you need to grow. What you really want to think about is, does growth improve your economics, or does it require you to spend more and more to support that growth? If it's the latter, you don't have the processes in place. You are taking more risk. If you go back and improve some of your structure, improve some of your processes, you are going to not only have a better basis for growth, you're going to make yourself more profitable and give yourself the funding to do it. As in anything with a young business, it all comes back to culture. Now, when you started your business, I'm sure you wanted to make it a nice place to work, and that's a great thing. But culture is really part of having a strong, profitable business in creating that platform for growth. First of all, a good culture, a good staff gives you a consistency and quality. Knowledgeable staff makes fewer mistakes. They know the customers, they know the products, they know how to sell, they can answer questions, they can deal with issues. That also makes decision making easier. There are more people who know more. When you need to make a decision, you can get inputs from multiple sources, multiple viewpoints, but also those people who understand the business, who are closer to the problem, may be able to make many decisions on their own, freeing you up to continue to focus on growing the business. A good culture, of course, helps with recruitment and retention. Turnover is a risk to your business. It's a risk to your brand. It costs you time and money to recruit and train people. Having a good culture that makes it easier to recruit new people is obviously crucial as you continue to grow. So, are you focused on creating a culture or is it just something that happened? Even if it's something that's just happened, look at what's good about your corporate culture and really figure out how you can build strengthening that culture into all of the processes you have around growth. As I hope you can see, it's not a trade off between building a resilient business and focusing on growth. You can and should do both, particularly because growth is naturally destabilizing to a business. New products or new initiatives add risk, add complexity. Sometimes it can increase some of those concentrations or points of failure. You have limited underlying processes, you have more room for risk. So, testing, iterating, building those processes is very important because then you have another stable element that further strengthens your overall business, that gives you those margins, that gives you that financial and operational flexibility you need to add new products to have the base for continued growth. One way to look at it is if you were starting today, when you look at how your business operates, when you look at your corporate culture, what would you build or do differently that would make the business more resilient and allow you to have that platform for continued growth? Because that's really the underlying issue when you want to look at, are you built to last? As always, we have a full list of questions you can access at the link in the show notes. We urge you to work with other business owners. They have similar issues. They may have solutions to your problems and vice versa. If you don't have that option, share it with us. Tell us what you think. Tell us what questions you have. We will share it back to you. Next week, we're going to focus on your team because if you want to continue to grow, that is going to be crucial. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel below and sign up for our newsletter at paddlingfuriously.com/newsletter so you can get all of our questions, all of our tips, all of the information from other business owners like you that will help you to continue to grow and be successful. We'll see you next time.